Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Movie Night here on Random Trek. I am your fearless Starfighter, Captain Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my trusty navigator, Commander Brennan, the mystical Mar. Brennan, are we ready to do this?
Yes, and this is not a podcast. It's a test. A test.
Yes, today we are taking a look at the newly aged, just like us, 40-year-old movie. It turned 40 this month, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
The Last Starfighter.
Mm-hmm.
We are taking a look at that, but we are not alone today. I have a friend of mine who has a podcast of his own, and they happen to be looking at this same movie. So I thought, we've got to have him on to talk about this. His podcast is the And I Quote podcast. Check it out on all the platforms that it's on. This is my friend, Ryan Permison. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Thanks for having me. My gosh, it's can't believe it's been 40 years since this film came out. Granted, I was never even close to being alive back then, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still cool that it turns 40 this year, and the actors and actresses and people who work behind the scenes are making the rounds of conventions in and around the country and around the world. So my hats are off to them, and I hope they enjoy themselves because my goodness, 40 years, it's amazing.
That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Well, as you're new to our show, I have the first question will always go to you, sir. Being a Star Trek podcast, what are your feelings and experiences? Why do you like Star Trek?
Oh boy, good question. Well, mostly, I like to talk about both the Star Wars and the Star Trek. But for Star Trek particularly, I became a fan not too long ago. Actually, it was somewhat recent. About a year or two ago, I became a fan. I bought the 10 movie Blu-ray set of
Mm-hmm.
the original and the TNG movies on Blu-ray, respectively. It was just one giant box set with the USS Enterprise on the cover. It's really nice. So I watched it because I heard of Star Trek. I knew of it. I watched the rebooted trilogy from J.J. Abrams, and I thought I need to go back to the beginning and see where this started. And I didn't bother watching the motion picture because it's boring. Didn't, and I watched two onward, Wrath of Khan onward. And the one film that stood out to me that made me a Star Trek fan, which is the Star Trek fan I am today, is Star Trek First Contact. It's my
Yes.
favorite. It's my favorite Star Trek movie. It's my
Oh,
favorite of
yes.
it's my favorite of the entire cinematic universe when it comes to Star Trek. No disrespect to the TV series because I haven't binge watched all 8 billion episodes of all
Mm-hmm.
80,000 Star Trek series, and I probably never will.
We're nearly at 1,000 episodes total.
That's way too many.
Yeah.
So that's too much homework for me. It's easier to watch 2.5 hour movies these days. Thanks.
Yes.
So yeah, First Contact is my favorite. Picard's my favorite captain. The line must be drawn here, this far and no further, and I'm going to make them pay for what
And
they've done.
I will make them
Yeah,
pay.
is one of the
Yes.
best scenes ever
Yes.
in a movie, not just Star Trek, but in movies and period. Because Patrick Stewart is the man. He owns the
Yes.
screen. He's played two iconic characters in his. I mean, among others, of course, but the two most legendary characters for me, anyway, in his filmography is Picard and Professor Charles Xavier from the X-Men series. So bless that man's heart. Love Patrick Stewart. I actually got his memoir book over here on my bookshelf. I haven't read it yet, but looking forward to reading when it happens. But yeah, that movie just made me think, you know what? This franchise is actually good. It's got some good stories, good characters. It's way separate from Star Wars, which is great. It's awesome. It definitely
Mm-hmm.
separates itself from the other franchise that shall not be named, although we've named it 300 times. But yeah, First Contact is my favorite. Let's see. I think my favorite of the original series of the 10 movies that I saw. I'm actually a Search for Spock fan. I actually really like
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek 3. And by the way, that movie turns 40 this year. Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock,
It is. Yeah.
which we're doing a movie watch along for that in a couple weeks on And I Quote channel. So stay tuned. It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm a Search for Spock fan. That's my favorite of the original 6 movies that came out featuring the original series.
I have had enough of you.
Exactly, and it's Christopher Lloyd. He plays a Klingon
Yeah.
before right before he plays Doc Brown. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's pretty much what made me the Star Trek fan. Is Star Trek First Contact. I literally have the movie poster over here on my wall, framed up. It's really nice.
Resistance is futile.
It is.
Oh yeah.
Resistance is futile. It really is.
Oh, it's great. It's
Mm-hmm.
fabulous. Well, we're
Great movie.
great to have. It's great to have you on here.
Thank you.
But as always on movie night, I turn the con over to Commander Brennan.
I understood that reference.
Thank you, Captain Sir. Yes. As of, I believe, 2 weeks ago, this movie turned 40 years old. The Last Starfighter is a fun, awesome space adventure movie of the 1980s, an era chock full of great sci-fi family films with just complete technical innovation, the early use of CGI. If I'm not mistaken, this was definitely in those early days of like Star Trek Wrath of Khan, which came out in 1982, used one of the earliest computer generated effects in demonstrating the Genesis device. And this movie uses it in such an innovative way that we haven't seen before. And it's also just a very much in the tradition of the coming of age story. Kid growing up in a trailer park, dreaming of something better, gets a chance to do something great and to really make something of himself. So let's talk first. Ryan, how were you introduced to this movie?
Oh boy. So this is going to shock a couple of people, but probably not many. So I didn't see this movie until a year ago. It took me that long to get on
Oh,
this bandwagon, if you will, because I heard a few things about it over the years, but I didn't really give it much thought. It just wasn't on my radar really. But I went to, what was it? I went online to a lovely place. It's called Amazon. And I bought the Blu-ray, the 25th anniversary edition Blu-ray of The Last Starfighter, respectively, from Universal Pictures, I think it was. And I sat down and I watched it one day because I had some time to kill. I haven't seen it before. I'm like, okay, I love when I watch movies for the first time that I've never seen before. It's a great experience, no matter what. So I watched it, and the moment the movie was over, I thought, wow, this is actually a fun movie. It's got a spirit to it that
mhm.
uh, not too many movies have. Some do, of course, but a lot of people say this: movies are the product of their time. And Last Starfighter came out at the very beginning of the 80s. And let's be honest, the 80s was one of the best decades in the history of pop culture, for sure.
Mhm.
There's so many different reasons
Yeah.
why. But yeah, I watched the movie. I enjoyed it. I thought the score was good. Alex Rogan as a character is very relatable. We've all been there, wanting more for our life and, stepping
Yeah.
out of our comfort zones and doing things we wouldn't normally do. And the other thing is, who can say no to Catherine Mary Stewart, honestly?
I
I mean, she
mean,
looks to the
yeah.
camera halfway through the movie when she's trying to figure out what's going on. And she says, "I love you, Alex Rogan." As soon as she said that, I'm like, whoa, can you be my girlfriend in the 21st
Yes.
century? Because my
Yes.
goodness, girl. Catherine Mary Stewart is, and by the way, a lot of people can attest to this. The 80s not only gave us some of the best movies of all time and some of the best TV series of all time, but it also gave us some of the most beautiful women
I would
of
agree.
all
I
of
would
all
agree.
time. And I think Catherine Mary Stewart falls within that category if you want to start doing some comparisons here. But
So some
yeah,
of the hairstyles, maybe not,
oh
but
yeah, the hairstyles, the look, the clothing,
no.
the speech, the
Yeah.
vernacular, whatever it was, they all nailed it. And this movie just has fun and it has spirit to it. That's the biggest thing I took away from watching this movie for the first time about a year or two ago, is that it has spirit, and it's a good thing to have. It's nothing to be ashamed of, really. So, and it's got an underdog story, and who doesn't like an underdog story? We all relate to it because they throw it into most movies that have come out in the last 45, 50 years. There's always an element of underdog in someone. So I dig it. That's Last Starfire became a bit of a favorite of mine. I'm like, you know what? This is a good movie. I can see myself rewatching this a couple more times. It's fun. It's just fun to watch, and plus, Catherine Mary Stewart, hello. I prefer her performance in this movie more so than what she did a year or so later, a few years later in Weekend at Bernie's. Really,
Mm-hmm.
Weekend at Weekend at Bernie's. I prefer Weekend at Bernie's too compared to the first one, but that's a hot take for you right there. But yeah, Last Starfighter. That's between the two performances that I've seen her in. Last Starfighter is her best performance.
I mean, the celebrity crushes of the 80s. I mean, yeah.
There's a million of them.
Yeah, it's great.
Good number.
But yeah, no, that's amazing that you were able to see this film
Mhm.
recently and still find it. that it had not lost any of its exuberance
Hmm.
of that 80s. But there's something about the 80s when it comes to sci-fi and fantasy that just it's something that I absolutely love. Chris, how did you come to this movie?
This one kind of throws a theme here that I've been following all summer with our films, and this was on regularly on TV. This was again one of those films that you'd find on a Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, little edited because it's the 80s. And we'll talk about that. There's some things
Hmm.
in here which I'm like,
That's true.
eh,
There's a couple of jokes there.
eh. Yeah, but no, it was on TV. Of all the movies we've reviewed and what we'll review next month, this is the one I probably saw the least.
Mhm.
I remember the Death Blossom scene
Yes,
very fervently as a kid. I will
that's good
never
stuff.
forget that. And of course, Robert Preston. I am a big
Yes,
fan
yes.
of Robert Preston in a lot of things.
I
The
am a
Music
huge
Man,
Robert
one of my
Preston fan.
favorite musicals of all time, is The Music Man.
Hmm.
So those things I remember so fervently. Um, but watching it now, it was like stepping back into being a kid and just sitting and enjoying it. And I kind of thought being 1984, my memory of it might be tainted. I'm like, oh, maybe the graphics are going to be, you know what? No, this is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's perfectly serviceable. A little overdone as these early 80s movies were in
Hmm.
terms of a little more sexualization than I'd like with
Hmm.
certain things. Sorry. But it is what it is. It's a product of its time, as Ryan said, and that's absolutely correct. But I still love this movie so much. And it's a video game movie. I don't care what anyone will tell me. This is a video game movie. And I'm sad. I looked for years and years and years and years and years and years as a kid. I never got to play the last Starfighter.
So you
It,
never were called to defend the frontier
it was
against
never called to defend the
Zura and the Conan
frontier.
Armada.
And it is a true story that they tried to make a video game out of this. Atari had a deal and they worked on it. But when it looked like the movie wasn't going to make money, they bailed.
Mm.
And
That's a bummer.
so, yeah, there is
I would have liked to have seen that.
there is almost no remnants in a
And
video game form, which it should be,
video
of the
game
Last
companies,
Starfighter.
if you're listening, please.
Long story short, they were going to take just like in the game that you see, they used the similar form that they did on Star Wars the video game, the arcade
Hmm.
game at the
Hmm.
time. They
Hmm.
were going to do pretty much the same thing for Last Starfighter and mimic that, but again, it didn't work. They didn't make a lot of money on this. The home markets, they said no. I think there might have been a weird clone thing on some computers, but otherwise you're not going to find it.
That's
But
unfortunate.
again, I'll keep it brief and short. I love this watching this. This is a great one. And again, backdoor video game movie, hands down.
Well, I am. I first saw this. I think we had it taped off the television because it had some of the um, censoring that you mentioned, particularly some of the words that Lewis says, which are like, "Oh, the '80s."
It's kind of funny. Most of it is about Lewis.
The things that kids could say in the '80s in movies.
Mhm.
I mean, we've been doing a slumber of the '80s. It's like, oh yeah, they were allowed to say that back then and not get in trouble with the censors.
Mhm.
No, but a great film. I first saw it taped on TV. As I said, we watched it. I think it was like maybe 10 when I first saw it. And this is a movie I watched again and again and again. And this is before I knew who Robert Preston was, but now yeah, The Music Man is one of my favorite films. We'll get to him in a minute. We'll talk about him. But this is just such a memorable part of my childhood. And it definitely part of that 80s nostalgia. Um, so let's get into it. The plot is pretty simple. kid learning a trailer park, wants a better life, is really good at an arcade game called Starfighter. Well, it turns out it's a recruiting tool for an actual Starfighter Corps defending the frontier against Zura and the Kodan Armada. And he gets recruited, isn't too sure about it, as often happens in these coming of age stories, but then ultimately accepts his destiny and saves the galaxy. So fairly straightforward, so we won't spend too much time talking about it, but Ryan, your thoughts on this very basic plot?
No, I mean it works for what it is. It's an '80s film. It's an underdog story. You know, you got some of these actors that some people may have known back then, but maybe they weren't really, A-listers, like or B-listers, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of these actors were up and coming at the time. So this was like, to a certain extent, this was their big break, right? I mean, Robert Preston being the veteran that he is, he's coming in, shepherding the new kids on the this on the set and on the new frontier, as it were. So it works. It works for what it is. There's so many other movies you can say, oh, well, it's the same plot as this. Oh, it's a ripoff of that. Oh, it's a ripoff of that. Who cares? Every movie in any piece of media has been informed or inspired by another form of media, hence the reason they made it to begin with. So, and the funny thing is about not only the premise, but the fact that this movie got made is because the guy who kills people in movies, known as Michael Myers, Nick Castle,
Yes,
is the guy who what did he direct this movie, which
he
is
did.
insanity to me.
He
That
did.
Michael Myers, the Michael Myers, directs a kid-friendly, family affair known as The Last Starfighter. I'm thinking to myself, did like Laurie Strode kill him in the first one? We just didn't see it, and then he becomes a good guy, and then starts making kid-friendly movies.
He hung up.
Yeah, he hung up the mask. He hung
Mask.
up the kitchen knife, and he said, "I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to make kid-friendly movies." So, in a weird multiverse, that's what what's his name, Nick Castle did. So when I found that out during the behind-the-scenes documentary, I thought to myself, "Wow, I didn't even like Halloween, to be honest, but this guy, the guy who was in the suit, made this movie. That is amazing." To me, that someone like that can make a movie like this, and he succeeded. I mean, even though the movie didn't make billions of dollars, mind you, it was to a lot of people, it was a box office failure, right? It was a box office flop, but it gained a cult following over the years. And look at 4 decades later, people were still talking about this thing. So clearly, it made an impression on somebody, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking about this movie 40 plus years later. I mean, I wasn't even born. Some of us here weren't even born when this movie came out. So I didn't discover it until 35 years later. But hey, at least I finally got around to seeing
If it makes you feel any better, I wasn't born when this movie came out.
Great.
I was.
I'm not the only person in this world who wasn't born in '84. No, it's fine. It's fine, Chris. We still love you, brother. Age is just a number. Don't let it fool you. You're only as old as you feel, man.
I think I would have been like 3-4 months when this came out.
Exactly, and not only that, dude. We're all kids at heart. Let's remember that. So there you go. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the plot and the fact that Michael Myers directed it.
I mean, how amazing is that? Chris, your thoughts on this very simple plot?
I really like the plot. I did find it very similar to kind of a basic Star Wars kind of thing. He very much is a Luke Skywalker type. And there are things in here definitely that scream to me trench run at the Death Star. And that's not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all.
It's
It just does.
It's true.
But it doesn't amaze me that Nick Castle did this, and I'll tell you why. I'm amazed. Not really, I guess. I see a lot of what I call adult directors who do family-friendly films. You're like, or creators and writers. I think Robert Rodriguez and the Spy Kids films. I'm like, what?
Think
No
Martin
way.
Scorsese doing Hugo.
Exactly, Martin Scorsese. And I was also thinking of Ian Fleming and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Like, creator James Bond wrote a children's play. I'm like, wow, this happens. Being creative isn't a limitation of the type of content that you put out. Anyone can make something for anyone. And I really like that. So I really love this aspect that he comes in and does this film. And it's not the last family film that he would do. He would go on to write the story for Hook, one of my all-time favorite pieces. Yeah, he did the story for Hook. I love it. That fits him. And
That
then
would
Major
explain a
Payne,
lot.
not exactly a children's film,
Rufio,
but I watched Major Payne a
Rufio.
lot when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyone can do it. And I like that. And the simplicity of the story works. Being an English teacher, I teach my students all the time about the hero's journey. The hero's journey is an essential
The
archetype.
Joseph Campbell. Yeah.
And
Yep.
and he absolutely
George Lucas was inspired by that.
And Castle does it too. Castle does it here 100%. You can't look at Alex and don't think of him as the Luke Skywalker or the Harry Potter, or it's the same process. And there's nothing wrong with that. It does it very well. It does it very simple. And because it's a simple story, it allows you to sit back and enjoy all the other aspects, and you don't have to think too deep into it. I like that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the simpler the better in this kind of case. It really gives us a very simple, easy to understand story that it just goes. I mean, you have this idea, and it just all works in terms of yeah, okay, what if a video game is the Excalibur of this, the sword and the stone? It's what if the game is that? And that is a great idea. And I think that even it's more, maybe even more resonant today, because this is at the time that arcades were they're all the rage. Nowadays, video games are elevated to an entirely different level. And we've had nothing but generation after generation. This is their art form. And so I think that it speaks to the people today even more than it did back then. So let's get into the characters. So we have the Lance guest is Alex Rogan. But I wanted to talk just about, as Chris mentioned, there are a few actors here who have appeared in Star Trek. So Chris, why don't you give us a quick rundown on that?
Yeah, so I'll do billing and go way down. And it's funny because as the further down, the bigger the Star Trek name you get. Let's start with Norman Snow, who plays our villain Zur.
Yes.
He was in the TNG 6th season episode Rightful Heir as the Klingon Torin. This is the one with the reappearance of Kahless. And he's there with Worf kind of praying and trying to, summon Kahless, as it were. So yeah, Zur is in Star Trek as a Klingon. Then we move down to his brother, the ambassador Enduran, played by
father.
Oh, it's his father? I thought it was his brother.
Yeah, he's like, don't call me father.
Oh, I guess I misheard that. Anyway, K.E. Cutter, I never pronounced that. He's played 2 roles in Star Trek. In the 4th season TNG episode, The Nth Degree, he's the Cytherian.
Yes.
And then in the 1st season DS9 episode, The Storyteller, he plays a Bajoran named Sarah. So there you go. 2 more roles. Let's see. We have Barbara Boson, Jane Rogan, Mrs. Rogan, I guess she went up. She is in DS9 as well in the 2nd season episode Rivals as Rowana, the character of Rowana. My favorite one that I missed, and I caught it luckily. Meg Wiley. Now that name not sound much to anyone. Meg Wiley in this played Granny. Is Granny, yeah. Meg Wiley is possibly one of the most important people in Star Trek history. She played the Telosian Keeper.
Yes.
In the TOS pilot The Cage, and of course the Menagerie.
Yes.
She's a Telosian. She is the first Star Trek villain.
Shared universe.
Yeah, like it's huge.
She-
Then my two favorite, I missed these and I had to watch it again when I was looking through IMDb. The shape-shifted assassin, shapeshifted into kind of a drifter, hitchhiker,
yes.
played appropriately by none other than the Cardassian we all love to hate, Gul Dukat, Mark Alamo.
Marcolemo,
Mark
yes.
Alamo is in this. Yeah, it was a shocker. I looked at it again. I'm like, this Mark Alamo. And then the blink it you'll miss it appearance in his first film ever. Young Wesley Crusher himself, Will Wheaton, plays Lewis's friend that you only see for half a second in the ending scene if you look carefully.
Yep.
Wow.
He's in that, yeah, but young Will
Well,
Wheaton.
I am going to have a chance to meet Will Wheaton at a convention in a couple of weeks.
Oh,
Well, I'm going to have to tell him, okay, man, the
What
last
was it like
Starfighter.
filling Last Starfighter?
Yeah.
Really? That's what you want to talk about?
yeah. Even though you're in it for like half a second, ask him about that. In the words of Sheldon, fetch me, Will Wheaton.
That's Will Wheaton, yes.
But yeah, it amazed me.
That's
Wheaton
funny.
and Alamo. Wheaton and Alamo, I had no idea.
That's crazy.
Missed it. And I love
Wow.
Alamo. And it's kind of
Yeah.
funny because if Star Trek fans know, Mark Alamo changes his face to subverse the Bajorans and to get to the paw raids. Like he doesn't shapeshift. It's kind of the same thing here. So I really like that. Those are, besides the themes and a lot of the science fiction, those are heavy Star Trek people, especially the last three. Did
Yes.
not expect that.
Yes. And so it's really amazing the connections here.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have to talk about him. The great Dan O'Hurley as Greg. One of the most familiar faces of character actors.
Mm-hmm.
Halloween 3, RoboCop. The list just goes on of what he's been in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first movie I saw him in. And he's hard to recognize under all that makeup. But Greg as a character is so lovable. And he's like your sidekick you want to have. Like, he's the guy that you want to hang out with. And really a lot of fun character. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on Ryan, Dan O'Hurley as Greg.
Well, first of all, that's interesting. I didn't know that, and I've seen RoboCop, but it's been a little bit of a minute since I've seen RoboCop because Dead or Alive, You're Coming with Me, one of the best lines ever probably uttered in cinematic history. But among others as well, there's a lot of great RoboCop one-liners there. But no, I think that's really cool. And what character did you play in Last Starfighter? You said it was the brother, or
He's Greg,
Greg.
the
oh, he's
navigator.
Greg.
Greg.
Okay, all right.
Behind
Gotcha.
all that, I know behind all that makeup, it's hard to tell.
All right,
And
I was gonna say like,
he has a thick Irish brogue, and you don't hear it in this movie.
yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing too. But no, I think that's cool. I think it's great. You know, all these connections that you find with different actors and different performers who've worked in other projects or similar themed ones, whether it be sci-fi, fantasy, whatever. That's really good stuff. So yeah, him as that character in Last Starfighter, it works. I mean, granted, with all that prosthetics and stuff, geez, that must have been hard. But you know, hey, you got to tucker through it. You got to truck through it, right? I mean, it may feel like 350 degrees with all that prosthetics and the costume and everything else on, but geez, more power to anyone who does it. I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Chris, thoughts on our great Dan O'Hurley.
I really like him. I do, but I remembered him incorrectly. I will be honest. When I was a kid, for some reason, I remembered him being this rougher kind of character. Like, I don't even know why you're here. Why, that kind of type. He's not at all. He's supportive. He's kind. He's got a sense of humor. And he really fits the role as a mentor. Not just a sidekick, but a mentor. I really like him in this. He's
true.
friendly. He's kind. Keeping up with the Star Wars references. If if Alex is Han, this is Chewie. This is Chewie, and I'm okay with that.
That's awesome. I mean, and then we mentioned her earlier, and got to talk about really quick about Maggie. I mean, Catherine Mary Stewart is stunning, and I think that it's interesting because usually in one of these kind of coming of age stories, the guy doesn't have a girlfriend and ends up with a girlfriend. This subverts that. He's already got a girlfriend. And she's actually a larger part of this story. Not just a side character really, but she is rather important. And some of the hijinks with her and the beta unit are rather fun. But as far as, and then there's Lewis. We'll talk about Lewis. Lewis is the typical 80s little brother. Looking in Playboys and saying words that might not fly today, but definitely in keeping with kind of that 80s kid feel. But the guy who I do want to spend some time talking though, the one, the only Tony-winning Robert Preston as Centauri. Chris, will start with you on this one. He's basically Harold Hill in space,
Yes.
and I'm okay with that. What do you think?
This is my guy. I love Robert Preston so much. Two of my all-time favorite films of his, these are his last two films, Victor Victoria and this. In fact, this
Yes.
is his last film.
Mm-hmm.
And that does make me a little sad. I was sad to see that this was indeed his last film. He would die 3 years later, day before my birthday in '87. I really enjoy him. He's charming, but he does feel like a little bit like a huckster. And I
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
It's like I got to get help from anywhere in the universe and I'm going to do it any way I can. Did you do it the normal way? No, I use this thing called a video game. Dude.
Yes.
And he plays a little bit of the Obi-Wan Kenobi type
A little bit.
role, and we think he dies, but he doesn't. Spoiler alert. But I enjoy him so much in this. Robert Preston is such a hoot. He's got energy in abundance. Even at this age, at this time in his career, he just keeps going with it. I love that he talks in the third person. Not all characters can pull that off.
Centauri's the name, boy.
Yeah. Talks about himself all in the third person. So I like kind of the quirkiness that goes with him. I love his car. I
Yes.
love the car. It's just as much a part of him. In watching it, does it not remind you of the DeLorean?
A little bit.
I looked at it and I kept thinking, this is kind of the DeLorean, especially when it folds its legs up or its wheels up. And I was like, it really reminds me of the DeLorean. It's not a bad thing, but it's a kind of a part of him, and he's driving this fast little sports car, and he's a quick talking, smart talking kind of guy, but his heart's in the right place.
He's like one of those door-to-door vacuum salesmen.
He's not afraid to get a gun out. He's not afraid to do the dirty work. I like him.
Yeah.
I
love his costume too. The kind of the old-timey look with the hat and the suit.
It reminded me of Columbo. I kept getting Columbo vibes with that, but that's okay. It works for him.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. He's got that huckster salesman energy, which apparently they wanted him in this role because of this role in The Music Man. And because of this role as Harold Hill, they wanted him in this role, and I think that's perfect casting because this is basically an intergalactic Harold Hill.
He really is.
This is a very much a, can I just have 5 seconds of your time? Yeah. I've got a proposition for you.
Very much a used car salesman kind. And it works, though, in this case.
And you're right. How does a guy this old have this much energy?
I have no idea. And here's the thing: we say old. He was
Well,
only in his 60s.
that's true. He wasn't that old, but
Yeah, and I don't know the
but the fact
circumstances
that
of
he
his
has a
death.
lot of the same energy he had when he was like younger,
Hmm.
like it's amazing. And I love that is very much that even the Rylands are like, oh no, not him again. You're like, you just can't help yourself,
I was gonna
Centauri.
say, I feel like with him, and it was kind of insinuated, I feel like he might have brought some losers before.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's like, oh, why do you keep doing this to us? What do you mean you're searching outside of the Star Federation? It's not Federation.
Starly.
The Star League. Why are you looking outside of the
Sorry,
Star
I've
League?
seen
That's
this
not
movie
really
many times.
allowed. So yeah, all of it works. He's unconventional with an unconventional actor for an unconventional character.
Yeah,
And
because when you think Brother Preston, you don't really think science fiction.
not at all.
And he gives it his all. There is no sense of, oh, I'm doing a dumb kids movie.
Hmm.
This is him fully in.
Hmm.
Ryan, your thoughts on the great Robert Preston as Centauri?
Well, unfortunately, I've never seen The Music Man, so
Oh,
never seen it, and I'm not really a big musicals fan either. So probably just lost you a few
oh.
subscribers there, but that's all right. You'll
Oh.
get them back.
Well, we don't
So
have
yeah,
that many anyway, so.
there you go. Yeah, so I'm not really familiar with this guy. I don't know anything about him until I saw Last Starfighter, but his performance is good. It's fine. It's comedic at times. Being the mentor slash recruiter for the kid, it works. And plus it's been a minute since I've watched this movie, so I'm definitely gonna have to go back and revisit this Last Starfighter specifically. But from what I remember of seeing it, yeah, he was fine. I mean, I think to a little bit of a degree, he got a bit of annoying for me at times,
Mm,
but just a little bit. But it's my first time watching the movie. I'm not expecting perfection, so and no movie is perfect. So I mean, well, there are exceptions to that rule, but
well,
I won't say what those movies are on this show. I'll say that for another time. But
actually, you might be surprised.
okay, all right, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. But
I mean, I do host a Star Wars podcast, so.
no, okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, we talk about Star Wars on the Nerdy Cantina on my side of the fence with Anti-Quote Channel. Just did our reviews of the Acolyte recently,
Hmm.
which caused a major stir in the comments. Let me tell you.
Oh my word.
But then it caused a major stir across the entire fandom. So what else is new?
Apparently, yeah.
Huge.
But what else
But
is new?
exactly. But no, Last Starfighter, Robert Preston, good job, good performance. Clearly, I need to go back and watch either The Music Man or maybe some of his other performances. I don't know, but we'll see. But other than that, yeah, he was good for what he did.
Yeah. And we have to talk about, I mean, it really quickly. No movie like this is complete without a villain. Even if he is rather cartoonishly over the top, but still enjoyable. Zur. Maybe not the strongest villain of movie history. Norman Snow is chewing the scenery. But you know what? In a movie like this, I'm okay with chewing the scenery. What do you guys think? Chris, will start with you.
I didn't like him.
Eh,
I don't
fair
like
enough.
it at all.
Fair enough.
The thing is, I want a villain in my sci-fi. If this was a straight comedy, okay, I'd buy it. He's a little inept. If he was a little dark helmety, little
Mm.
sneak peek to next month, I'd buy that.
Oh,
Okay,
can't
but
read in this thing.
I don't think it's meant to be that. He takes it too serious, and he's inept. He's highly inept. Um, all of his armada around him is warning him, telling him, "Hey, we should do this. Maybe we should do this." Maybe, and he doesn't listen to anything. He's
Mhm.
only concerned about his toy, that scepter. That's
Mhm.
all. All he's concerned with is
He's, he's,
power,
he's
and
a childish brat, is
he
what he is.
is, and he's not intimidating in any way, except when the hologram came on. That was
Mm,
intimidating.
mm.
When we were first introduced to him, okay, I buy that. But otherwise, he's whiny. He's drones on and on. It's you know what it is? It reminds me of those serial like Flash Gordon types.
Mm.
It'd be like the fiendishness of your wickedness plan is,
So
that kind of,
basically, Dr. Chaotica.
yeah, it felt like that. It did feel like
And we love
Chaotica and
Dr.
Voyager.
Chaotica. I mean, let's be clear.
Yeah, but that was meant to be
Yeah,
that way.
that was
This
better than
doesn't
this.
feel like
Yes.
it's meant to be
Yes.
that way. So for
I think
me,
I agree with you.
he is honestly the weakness of this film is your antagonist. He's
Yeah.
not a good
Which is too
antagonist.
bad because a good villain could have made this even better.
I agree, and he escaped. So if they had built him up better, then the idea of a potential sequel brought merit to me. But he escaped. Whoop-de-doo. That's how I feel about it as a villain. So I just don't think it worked.
Send all your complaints to Page Turn. No. No, I think you make some good points. Ryan, your thoughts on Zur?
Yeah, mustache twirling, one-dimensional villain just didn't work. Your movie, your hero is only as good as your villain, and the villain in this was poorly. It just didn't. There's another '80s reference there for you.
Yes.
Very poorly. So one-dimensional villain doesn't work. Not memorable. The best villains are the ones that you remember the most. And this, I just don't remember this at all. I don't even know who the
Star
villain was.
Trek and Star Wars both have, some of
Yeah. I
that.
mean, Star Trek has the Borg. It's just Star Trek had the Borg in First Contact. Yeah, Khan and Wrath of Khan. Yeah, the Borg in First Contact.
Christopher Lloyd in Star Trek 3. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm just saying though, but Star Trek 3, Search for Spock is a great movie too.
Yes,
But
it is.
but yeah, no, one-dimensional villain, don't care. Didn't really do much for me. Even though he hams it up because a lot of '80s films did this back then. I like Skeletor in Masters of the Universe. I thought Frank Langella was a great villain.
Frank Langella, yes.
Yeah,
That is an example of a movie where
it's a hammed up movie, but at
not
the
a
same time, if
great
you remember,
movie at all.
yeah, it's
Your
corny.
villain is actually pretty good.
And not only that, I actually enjoy, as I hate to say this, but this is the honest truth. I just saw Masters of the Universe earlier this year for the very first time, and I got to tell you, I enjoyed it.
Okay, Chris, we have to add it to our list.
Only
Okay, if you
because
want
we
to.
want to see Mr. Paris. I mean Mr. Locarno. I mean,
Oh yeah, Nick Locarno with that hair.
I mean,
yeah.
I liked Masters of the Universe. That had a better villain than this movie did, The Last Starfighter, with all due respect. But hey, 80s movies, products of the time, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the villains ham it up, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're cheesy, sometimes they're not. But yeah, this one, I don't even remember who the villain was. I don't even care. It's just
All right.
there.
Well,
he showed up. He had a paycheck. Great.
Well, nothing to see. Moving on. So we have to, of course, talk about our hero.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd say this is a pretty relatable hero. And that's Lance Guest as Alex Rogan. Very much the hero's journey. Kid who's kind of dreaming of something bigger. Lives in a trailer park in what is obviously Southern California. The most Southern California looking trailer park I think I've ever seen. And, and he gets this shot. Living in a small town that's so boring that a guy getting the high score on a arcade game is a set town event. That's a pretty boring town, if you ask me. But so he gets this shot to go out, and as the hero often does, he refuses the call. And then the Zandozan showing up, but also the destruction of the Starfighter base on Rylos really kind of motivates him into getting back in. And it's up to him and Greg in one fighter to go and stop the Condan Armada. Lance Guest is very likable. And it's some characters like this can come off as whiny and annoying. Can come off as just kind of totally obnoxious. I think that he isn't that obnoxious to me. And I think he is very sincere. And I think that he really is a great hero to this story, this kind of story, and there's not really a lot to say in terms of depth or anything like that. But I feel that he gets the job done. Ryan, your thoughts on Lance Guest?
No, you said it perfectly, and just I can't really add anything to these proceedings for this character, but
Mhm.
yeah, he works. He's a solid actor. He's got a bit of charisma in him. He's very likable, very relatable. You can cheer this kid on from beginning to end. And I watched the behind the scenes documentary of this movie when I got the Blu-ray,
Mm-hmm.
and you can tell that. I think when I go back and watch this again, because I haven't done it yet. Sorry, I should have done more research before this
No, it's all
episode.
good.
Should have done my homework, but a lot of changes in my life are going on, so that's the reason why I haven't been able to see it. But Lance Guest, Catherine Mary Stewart, they had so much fun making this movie.
And they
They
have
had
good
so much fun.
chemistry too.
They were good, and that's the other thing too. I'm thinking to myself, these characters are on screen and they're very good together, but I wonder if Lance and Catherine got dated off set, or maybe went on a couple of dates
Mm-hmm.
back in the heyday, when they were young and up and coming actors and actresses at the time. I'm curious if I see that they're supposed to be at a show here not too far from me in Pennsylvania next month called RetroCon in Oaks, Pennsylvania.
Ooh.
I'm not going to be able to make it because I have plans to attend another convention a couple weeks later in that same area or
Ah,
near that same area. But if I were there, I would say, hey, just between you and me, did you and Catherine, you guys date when you were making this thing, or maybe before or after? I mean, what's going on? Tell me, come on. Just from one dude to another.
and not
Let's talk
because we're
about it.
jealous.
Yeah, no. I'm not jealous, even though I kind of am. But Lance, I'm not going to tell you that. So it's the kind of conversation I can imagine having with Lance Guest and myself.
But yeah, their
But
chemistry does feel very natural.
it was great. It was great. Yeah. So no, he did very well in this movie. He's likable. It's a relatable character. It's an underdog story. We've all been there, and he's good. He's got a few funny moments too with his what is it called? His doppelganger, the
Mm-hmm.
robot.
The
I
beta.
thought that yeah, I thought that was kind
Beta,
of funny.
yeah.
Yeah, Beta Alex. Yeah, that was funny too.
Some of the visuals with Beta were actually really interesting.
Mhm.
And how they were able to pull off some of that stuff is like, oh, that's clever.
Yep.
Chris, your thoughts on Lance Guest as Alex Rogan?
I really like him. I like him a lot better than I will in Jaws: The Revenge. That's
Oh,
another
well,
story.
that's
No, he's charming. He's understandable, and his motivations make sense. He's in this trailer park, which really felt kind of like a lost Route 66 kind of
yeah,
place.
yeah, a little bit.
I thought it was like Southern California, maybe Nevada, somewhere right in that area,
It's
because they
got
did,
that feel, the hills and
yeah, they
yeah,
did mention Las Vegas. So I was like, I could
kind of
buy this.
in that area. Yeah.
Yeah. But I buy this. He's stuck there. He can't get out. Everyone relies on him. He can't be himself or have the time to discover who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. He follows the hero's journey archetype perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
He hits it in all the ways. He denies it until he discovers, yeah, I can do this. Let's do this. Let's do what's right. And he
Yeah.
accepts the mission and accepts the
He has the
job.
moral strength.
Yeah,
He really has a moral heart.
and there definitely is a good chemistry between him and Maggie.
Oh, yes.
Yes, him and Maggie.
There's some
The beta,
hilarious
the
moments
beta
with
in
the
Maggie
beta.
is a whole other story.
Yeah, well,
That part to me,
maybe hasn't aged there as well. Maybe.
yeah, that was cringy. The whole lake scene was cringy, very cringy. But all that aside, I really like this guy. And Brennan, we should get an interview with him. He's got to be like a mile from where you
You think?
live. I walk across the road. He's probably there.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. He grew up. That was funny to me too. You lived in the Bay. I grew up in the Bay
Yeah.
until I was about 11. Guys from Saratoga.
Oh,
I
yes.
grew
All
up
right. So he
hearing
is in
about
my.
kids and people from where we lived making it big. And this guy, Yeah, and then he goes on, a total side note, he goes on to play Johnny Cash in Million Dollar Quartet on Broadway. I
Mm-hmm.
love that show, and I didn't realize it was him.
Yep. Yep.
So this guy, he's got the chops, and this is a young performance for him, but he's believable, he's understandable. Um, this is good. This is a very good performance, for what they're giving us. I
The,
love it.
the critics often pointed out, those who like this film, that his performance and his chemistry with Captain Mary Stewart were to them the emotional heart of the movie. And I think I agree. Without it, you don't really have much of the movie. Okay, we got to talk then about the music. Craig Safan, or Sathan, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. His score is marvelous. This is an extremely memorable score, very much in the vein of the kind of heroic heroes theme. Very triumphant and very joyous. And you know how often the movie scores are like the glue that holds it together. Without this score, I don't think this movie succeeds. This is a marvelous bit of music that I just love to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely puts you back into that 80s sci-fi mindset. Ryan, your thoughts on this score?
Yeah, it's, the thing I got from this movie overall is that it has a spirit to it, and I think the score just adds to that
Mm-hmm.
spirit or the fun element of it, of going on this adventure, whether it's in outer space or you're at the trailer park and you're trying to figure out where to go in life, or you're interacting with these characters in this environment that you're in, no matter who you are. It works. It really works, and it kind of reminds me. And by the way, this isn't a knock against anyone who composed the score for this movie, but it does have a bit of a Star Warsian, Star
Well,
Trekian
then,
vibe to it.
yeah, yeah.
And because Star Trek and Star Wars were so massive at that point. I mean,
Well,
you
and,
had
and
rapid
Star Wars changed the music scene.
changed everything. I mean, it changed everything in
Yeah,
'77. It
but
changed everything
particularly the
again.
music.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it changed everything again in '80 when Empire Strikes Back came out, and then 3 years later, you got Return of the Jedi coming out in '83,
and that changed everything again.
which John Williams is he's just that good.
Yeah,
So the score for Last Starfighter, it works. It's fun. I look forward to going back and watching this again and listening to the score and see if it still hits me like it did the first time I saw it. So yeah, great score, well done. Kind of reminds me of, I'm trying to think, who's the composer that did it reminds me a little bit of Jerry Goldsmith.
yeah,
You
it
know,
is. It got a little bit of that. Yeah.
yeah, it's got some Goldsmithian vibes to it, and it's funny because who would have thought that? To me, the biggest standout for me from a movie that really never happened, it doesn't really exist in my mind, even though I watched the extended cut in a film class one time. The movie Supergirl with Helen Slater.
Ooh.
That movie never happened. It doesn't exist. But Helen Slater is a beautiful woman, and she's gone on to do
Yes.
many, many
Yes.
incredible things with her career. So did Mark McClure. He did some things too. But and Horace Bachner became Ellis in Die Hard 4 years later. So
Hmm.
well done, Hans Booby. I'm your white knight. But the best thing about Supergirl is the score. And why? Because Jerry Goldsmith did it.
Yes, you did.
And Jerry Goldsmith nailed it. I thought to myself, if Supergirl had a movie, this would be her theme because it's similar to what John Williams did for Richard Donner's Superman,
Hmm.
but it's still her own theme. And it stands out. And that's what's great about Jerry Goldsmith. He did that for many movies and many, many actors' careers. So, but yeah, Last Starfighter, it's fun. It gives it that fun, what do you call it? Fun family adventure
It's
element.
magic. It's movie
Yeah.
magic.
If you want to call it that, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Hey, Chris, your thoughts on the score?
I love the score. I always say it that if you can't remember the score, but you can remember how it made you feel,
Mm.
that's a success. And that's what this film does, is it plays along. It doesn't overshadow. I mean, let's be honest. Now, I know this will sound crazy. You said, mentioned Supergirl. When I think Superman, you think John Williams score. And sometimes that song, it can overpower your thoughts of it. That song is powerful. Star Wars, the score from the original Star Wars,
Hmm.
it can do the same thing. Now, it's not bad. It just, sometimes it's too strong. It's
Mm.
great, but it's powerful. It's a little bit goes a long way. here, because it's not something that's readily recognizable, something that didn't go pop, none of that. It allows itself to
And is
play
used
with.
sparingly.
Yeah, it allows itself. I love when it's just him sitting there playing the game and you see the night matte sky that they have.
Oh yeah, and it starts to play the theme just lightly.
Yeah, just lightly. And that's perfect. It
Dun, dun,
sets
dun,
the
dun,
tone.
dun.
As he's actually in the Starfighter, fighting off the armada, and kind of that epicness builds up, but again, it doesn't overshadow everything.
Mhm.
So I think it's well done.
Awesome. Yeah, to me, this is a quintessential 80s sci-fi score.
Mhm.
And you're right. It makes you feel uplifted. It brings you like immediately back to that 80s sense of wonder and imagination. Okay, the last thing we'll talk about as we conclude, the spectacle. This movie did things that had not been done. Um, Tron had sort of set the framework for this. And this took it another step by expanding it into these space dogfights using CGI, which at the time, I mean, Return of the Jedi came out just a year before this. And the Battle of Endor, maybe the greatest space battle ever filmed, did not use CGI. Um, so this was fairly new with Last Starfighter. And I think that the CGI gets the job done. Is it primitive by modern standards? Yeah. But it really is quite amazing considering the time. And I feel that it does really. The space battles are a lot of fun. They really are. Um, so we'll start with our guest, Ryan. Your thoughts on the visual spectacle here?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. But my biggest problem with it was not that the effects are I mean, you can tell the effects are dated, right? But that doesn't bother
Mm.
me because it was made products of their time. The visual effects work for what they're trying to do, but my biggest problem with it is a lot of the ships or the visual effects had the ships like spinning,
Oh, yeah.
and it made me feel like I was on a roller coaster that I didn't want to be on because
Good point. Good point.
I don't like roller coasters to begin with. I went on a roller coaster one time and I thought to myself, no more. This is it. But there was a lot of spinning, and I kind of
Dizzying,
had to look away and
dizzying, yeah.
take a minute because I thought I was going to get so dizzy I was going to pass out and like not be able to finish watching this
Mhm,
movie.
mhm.
So nothing against the filmmakers, nothing against the producers, writers, cast, crew. They did what they had to do what the situations they were put in, what they were given. But yeah, visual effects are good, but way too much spinning, and I feel like you're trying to make your audience feel really upset and queasy.
Eh,
Please don't do that ever in a film. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you work for. I don't care what Hollywood industry you're in. Don't make your audience feel like they're going to have to go to the bathroom several times, okay? Because I just it was horrible for me the first time I saw it. Now, when I see this again and I know those scenes are going to come up, I'm going to do this, right? I'm either going
okay.
to I'm going to do the, two-handed face, or I'm just going to
Mhm,
turn away. And then Chris Ingle's going to DM me and be like, how dare you, sir, do that? No, it's fine. I'm just messing with you, Chris. I love you. But yeah, visual effects are good, but there were too many scenes where they were rotating a little too
Good
much, too
point.
fast, too quickly, and I feel like they were trying to make the audience have to go to somewhere they didn't want to go, which is not the final frontier, but to a place called the Room of Rest. Just saying. Anyway, those are my 2 cents.
Chris, your thoughts?
Okay, I'm with you on the movement. I did think the idea of the way the camera angles were and how the chair is always moving,
Mm,
and how we are going with that can be a little disorienting. And the Death Blossom, same thing.
mhm.
I get it. I understand it. I don't disagree with you, Ryan. But the animation here, which, mind you, we're only a few years off of Tron, and
This is 2 years after. Yeah.
I love Tron,
And I've
but it
seen the original
feels
Tron, just so everybody knows.
it
I did my homework on the original Tron.
Good.
it's so primitive. It was the start. It was important, but it's so primitive. In 2 years, this feels so much cleaner. It really does. I was just going along with it. I'm not looking at it as, oh, this is 80s graphics. This is no. It's clean. It's crisp. It works. I don't know who did it, but they took their time. They had to have, because this doesn't look chintzy for the time. This
Actually,
looks
what's funny is they didn't take their time because they had to do this on the quick.
really. It
And
doesn't feel that way.
and
There
even
were
though they did,
parts
it
of this
doesn't
movie
feel
were
that.
definitely rushed. They definitely were rushed, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate because then you could have made a much better film. But
But you're right, it still looks great for being
it
rushed.
does.
Yeah,
It looks
it's
crisp.
clean. That ship is absolutely beautiful. I know the ship was done CG. At least the outsides all were. I love that. Again, it felt like playing a video game from these eras. Even when it's polygonal, I'm fine with it. The space fights too, absolutely gorgeous. Really, it surprises me that a movie from 1984 pulled this off.
Yeah, and it was done by a small company that didn't really have a lot of access to super high-end stuff. And the
Digital
fact that they were
projections.
able to pull it off is,
Mhm.
I mean, that's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we sort of come to the end of our discussion, to me, this is definitely when I think 80s, particularly the 80s sci-fi cult films, sci-fi and fantasy, um, stuff that I absolutely love. This is part of that particular era that is a lot of fun memories for people, and those of us who were not like we're not teenagers in the 80s. We discovered these things later, but nonetheless, I think part of its magic and inspiration works on us even today. And I think The Last Starfighter definitely represents some of the amazing achievements of the 80s that maybe didn't get the love it deserved in its time, but in the years since has grown in how much people love it. So, we will begin, Captain Ingle, with you. What are your final thoughts on this movie?
It's a treat. It's a joy. I'm glad it held up as well as my memory allowed it to, and I don't think I was looking at it with nostalgia goggles.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. It was fun. It's entertaining. I would show this to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I do other than and we kind of glossed over it a little bit, but the cringy parts for Lewis, looking at Playboy and a little sketchy, and the makeout scenes at the lake.
Yeah.
Those made me go, "Ugh." Other than that, you edit those out. I don't think you mess with things too much.
Mm-hmm.
I like this film a lot. It's enjoyable. I I hesitate to say I don't want a sequel. I would like this remade. I would like this remade. Let's
I
get a
think you
fresh
could do
crack
something
at it.
interesting with it.
Yeah, I think there are some
Though
great
I don't know
ideas.
who you would get to replace Robert Preston. I mean,
Lin-Manuel. I know that sounds stupid.
I
Lin-Manuel.
don't know.
Eh,
No,
All right, I'm just a
no,
Hamilton
I was
fan.
gonna
What can
say
you do?
I can think of a million other people who
he's
would
too
be.
sincere. You need somebody not sincere.
I would think of I could think of like 15 people who would do a way better job than what's his name? Lin Manuel
Lin-Manuel
Miranda. Which
Miranda.
is such a long name, by the way. So ridiculous. Just call yourself Lin Manuel, please. But anyway,
You know what? Maybe here's a crazy idea. We'll keep it connected to Star Trek. Get
yeah,
Brent Spinner.
Brent Spiner, you mean?
I always said Spinner.
Okay.
I could see Brent doing it.
Yeah, he might
Data.
overact.
Yeah,
Robert Preston overacts sometimes.
but
What are
Well,
you
then
yeah, but
talking
again,
Robert
about?
I've
Preston can get
met
away with it.
Brent Spiner. I mean, he can do serious, but he can definitely do comedy.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Master of
yeah.
Disguise.
We don't count. That movie never happened.
No,
I don't think that movie ever happened, but it's not part of
no.
canon.
That's
Most
that's
people agree.
Mandela effect.
Yeah, Mandela effect. There you go. There's another one. Interesting.
Yes.
All right. Um, our guest Ryan Permison, we cannot thank you enough for joining us. What are your final thoughts on this movie, Ryan?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. First of all, thanks for having me. Second of all, I can't wait to go back and rewatch this because I've only seen it once in my entire career, so I need to go back and refresh my memory.
Mm.
And also, you got to remember, and this is something I love about the '80s. 1984, the '80s in general was a decade of taking chances. New franchises were coming out. Sequels were coming out like
Oh my
crazy
word, yes.
in the '80s. Like '84 had everything. You had the last Starfighter, you had Temple of Doom, you had the Terminator, you had the never-ending story for
Yeah.
Pete's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you had Star Trek 3, the search for Spock. I mean, you had anything and everything came out in '84. I'm telling you, '84
Conan
was
the
a
Destroyer.
you '84 was a banner year for the cinematic landscape, and I cannot wait until my friends and I gather together as a family and we celebrate the 40th anniversary of not only the Terminator, which, by the way, that's in my top 10 of all time.
Chris, we need to add that to our watch list.
You get the Terminator '84
I
is
mean, I've seen it many times, but
it's one of
yes.
the greatest of all time, period. But the Terminator, we're going to do a 40th anniversary for that, and we're also going to do a 40th anniversary for Search for Spock, Star Trek 3, and we're going to do another one for the never-ending story.
Mm-hmm.
That's how big
Mm-hmm.
1984 was. We just did our watch along a couple weeks
Say
ago.
my name.
Exactly. We did a watch along a couple weeks ago for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which is insane. So
Kalina.
yeah, Kalema, yeah, meet Kali, prepare to meet Kali in hell. Anyway, he's
Yes.
not just nuts, he's crazy. That's short round for you. Short round, we love you, buddy. But yeah, no, this film
We
is
do love
fun.
our Kihukon. Yes, we do.
Exactly. Yeah. The Last Starfighter, though, to keep things on the rails, even though I
Yes.
went way off.
Yes, that's fine.
The Last Starfighter is a fun movie. It's an adventure movie. It's fun. It's energetic. It's got a fun spirit to it, which I don't think a lot of movies have anymore. So if you ever get a chance, if you've never heard of this movie, you've never seen it, you don't even know what the heck it is, sit down, stream it on your streaming service, buy it on Blu-ray from Amazon, hashtag not a sponsor, but if they want to be, give us a call. And hook us up with some free swag because
And
I can give you some
hopefully
more
they give
Blu-rays.
us a nice 30th anniversary edition.
Hey, anything is possible. But yeah, no, Last Starfighter is a fun movie for me. I can't wait to go back and revisit it to celebrate its 40th anniversary, respectively.
Mm.
But yeah, fun movie, good times, great cast. Catherine Mary Stewart was everybody's crush, if not so many other actresses that were men and women's crushes.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, look at Leah Thompson, for example. I mean, my
Phoebe
gosh,
Cates.
that woman did like 40,000 movies in the 80s. It's ridiculous. Her first movie was Jaws 3, which is insane to me, by the way. That Leah Thompson's first role ever was Jaws 3D, which, by the way, I enjoy Jaws 3. I mean, anyone would agree with me on this. Jaws 3 is miles better than Jaws the Revenge because I couldn't even get
I think we can all agree on that.
I couldn't even get through the first 10 minutes of Jaws the Revenge when I watched it. I thought, this is garbage. Can't do it, Chris. I can't do it. But Last Starfighter is fun. Go and check it out. It's a good movie for most ages anyway. And it's got a good score to it. So check it out. I think you might enjoy it. And I enjoyed this movie visually effects wise more so than I did Tron. So there you go.
I think I agree with you on that.
And thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yes, we thank you so much for joining us. Captain Ingle, I turn the helm back over to you.
Thank you very much.
Or Captain on the bridge, I should say.
I've always been on the bridge. Just let you take the
make it so, number one.
So Ryan, I know obviously we've talked to you. You have a podcast. Why don't you plug your channel a little bit for us?
Sure, no problem. For once again, thank you both for having me. This was great. It was great to talk to you guys. And Brendan, I've seen you in the FCL and some other trivia matches.
Oh,
Dude,
thank you.
You're a beast from the East, a monster of the West.
I've got a little bit of ring rust. I need to do some studying.
It's okay, but you're the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas. It's just walking here. But anyway,
I thought you were doing what's his name from the author?
Stallone.
No, heavens, no.
I thought you were doing the author, the guy in the author playing.
No, Stallone is a totally different animal, Chris Ingle. Come on, let's be honest. But listen, if you want to know more about me and the stuff I do, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and Twitch, I should say. Twitch. We're on Twitch as well. At And I Quote Channel. We talk about everything fandom-wise. We embrace the nerd within you. That is the focus of our channel. We do shows talking about Star Wars called The Nerdy Cantina, which we just wrapped up with The Acolyte, which, the finale dropped, I believe it was last week. So check that out. We also are bringing back the Meaning of Fandom on Friday night, August the 2nd, where we gather a group of people together and they share with us some of their favorite fandoms or characters and why it means so much to them. And I'm very excited to bring that show back because it's been on hiatus for far too long. But the main flagship show is, you guessed it, and I quote, where I interview indie creators from all over the world each and every week on Saturdays at 12 p.m. EST. So check us out. Everything we do is live. Why? Because we like interacting with you, the incredible listeners/viewers of our programs. So if you like fandoms, if you like the War in the Stars, the Trek and the Star, so you guys are some kind of Star Trek. Zephyr Cochran. Gotta love that guy.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And if you love other fandoms, whether it be anime, whether it's Marvel, DC, whatever it is, we want to hear from you and we want to talk to you. So be one with the Force and the Force is with you. Let's do it. Let's talk about it on
It's a very good
channel.
Donnie Yen.
Exactly.
That's
Follow
a
us
very
there.
good Donnie Yen.
Thank you, sir. Follow us across all forms of social media. Follow me personally on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. Links are in our social media bios, but take a look at us. Take a look at our backlog because we got so many pieces of content for you to chew on because we are the cream that rises to the top. Oh, yeah. So check us out. Hope to see you there. And this was fun diving back into the 80s because the 80s, quite frankly, they had it all, man. And some of the greatest movies of all time turned 40 this year, which include The Last Starfighter. So let's celebrate these together, shall we?
Brennan and I last month when I had my wife on, we were talking about 80s films that we had not that he had not experienced, and we found out Batteries Not Included and the Cocoon films. And I was like, what?
Oh, God.
And the Goonies.
And Goonies.
Hey, you guys. Yeah, come on, man.
So yeah, the 80s are not dead here. They will
No, they're
return
not.
so much on this channel. This is what you get for having a 40-year-old captain born right in the middle of it all. Oh, I love the 80s.
Oh,
Anyway.
who doesn't? Who doesn't? Honestly, I love it.
All right. Well, yes, of course. Again, thank you so much, Ryan. But next week we move back into it. Last week the randomizer was picked. We've got Star Trek Discovery season 2, episode 6, The Sound of Thunder. And next month, our movie night here at the end of August is going to be a big one. This is a movie that really introduced me to comedy and gross humor and stupidity.
Yeah.
And I love it. And when this man cries, dies, I will cry. It's Mel Brooks's Spaceballs.
Everybody got that?
Yeah, everyone got that. Good. I may tell you, we don't.
When will the princess be married? Within the hours, sir. Sorry. I grew up watching that movie, so I know the movie lines through and through.
My daughter around the house, I keep hearing her every so often.
Really?
Surrounded by assholes.
Oh,
yeah.
Even though she shouldn't be saying that word because it's inappropriate, but whatever.
She's almost 17. I can't.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, I can't win with that one.
You can't win, dude. You can't
so
win.
next month, and we will be joined hopefully by some very special guests. Video Drew and Nerd Chronic will be joining us.
Drew and Eric. Yeah.
Oh,
Drew and Eric
Nerd
will
Chronic.
Yes.
They're some of our close friends, so yeah.
They're good friends with us.
Dude,
so
his promos, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Freaking love his promos.
But there was a point where Drew, when she was in the Schmodown, we were studying Mel Brooks pretty fervently. So I thought,
oh God,
who better to talk Mel Brooks than the person who's studying?
Having a conversation with Drew goes every which way.
That was the first Mel Brooks movie I ever saw. Was Spaceballs. True story.
It's another one that once again was on TV. That and Men in Tights.
They're both on cable television a lot these days.
But again, heavily edited.
Unless you're on IFC, there are no bleeps and no blurs on IFC.
I like IFC.
IFC 734 for those of you who have cable.
So yes, next month we will be taking a look at that.
That's gonna be fun.
Brennan, where can the people find you?
You can find me on X, though I'm still going to call it Twitter. At Brennan Mystical. You can find me on Threads and Instagram at Brennan Blue. On YouTube at Page Turners They Were Not. Where you can find this show and wherever you get your podcasts.
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at CIngle1984. But as always, we end every episode. Kapla! And live long and prosper.
And just for the sake of this episode, I'll end it with this: victory or death.